because there aren't enough internet videos talking about this movie. The Rise of Skywalker, the third and final part in the sequel trilogy in the Star Wars, I don't even know what you'd call it now, almost double quintilogy with spin-offs. This film was not that well received by critics, not that well received by Star Wars fans, but surprisingly well received by the normal movie-going public, and that kind of fascinated me. When I first saw it to do the Nostalgia Critic review, I was kind of blown away by some of the choices they made. I just couldn't believe this was the direction everything was going. It seemed so made up at the last minute. I thought maybe if I gave it some time and let it sit for a bit, it would get better, but nah, this only got worse. The film begins with the dead speaking. Yeah, I will never get tired of that. As Kylo Ren discovers the Emperor is still alive, or is it a clone, and does he have an army of clones? I don't know, it's never really that explained. All that matters is Ian McDiarmid is back, and that's cool. He's honestly maybe my favorite character in all the Star Wars movies. Does he belong here? We'll get to the end of it. It turns out he was Snoke and every voice that Kylo Ren's ever heard in his head, and he persuades him to take on, well, the galaxy, which he was kind of doing anyway. But now he'll be doing it for the First Order Empire 2.0. Who cares? Just take this giant army that'll mostly do nothing in the movie. And Rey, once again, has to build her strength and her army to take him on. Outside of that, without going into spoilers, I guess I can't say too much more. I mean, yeah, most people know all the twists and surprises in this, but honestly, it doesn't feel like it matters because everything just comes out of nowhere. The Emperor's the villain now? Okay. One of the characters is related to somebody else? Well, yeah, who isn't in this universe? Characters die and then come back while other characters betray their sides? Well, yeah, have you ever seen a Star Wars movie? Honestly, a lot of this repeating I would probably forgive if the movie would just take a breath. Almost nothing in this movie has a moment for somebody to accept something, to let something sink in. It just feels like a video game, going from one fight to another, discovering information, and then discovering more information, and then another fight, and then discovering more information, and then maybe somebody screams in anger, or somebody dies and people bow their heads, and then just on to the next fight, or bit of information, or I just didn't care by the end. Romances bloom even though they're never explored. Evil henchmen are built up even though they're never explored. New and old characters pop up, and you guessed it, they're never explored, so why should I care? I don't. There was very little to care about in this movie. Now, of course, the key word is little, meaning there were a couple things I did find a little interesting. Honestly, several of the ideas in this film I think have potential, and I think if you started off the trilogy with these ideas, maybe they could have worked. All the acting is good, especially Adam Driver. I feel like he's the one character that made it throughout these movies without getting scarred. Well, I mean, okay, he's scarred, but the character's still pretty cool. I like the way they worked in Leia, even though Carrie Fisher passed before the movie was made. True, you can kind of tell in certain areas, but this was a pretty difficult task, and I thought they handled it rather well. But aside from that, it just feels like every average run-of-the-mill sci-fi action film that isn't very good at keeping your interest. The only reason I would stay to finish is because I did enjoy the two films before it, and yeah, there's a timeless trilogy that came before that. The movie feels like the filmmakers just went into panic mode though, because Last Jedi was so divisive and so many people didn't like it. I mean, not just didn't like it, they despised it. They hated all the choices made, so they backtracked on a lot of stuff. Not to say there was a ton to go off of after that film. I mean, a lot of the directions that Force Awakens was building up was also kind of thrown in the garbage in Last Jedi. But at the core, they still had an interesting conflict, Rey and Kylo Ren. They were interesting, they had layers, one had a really complex past and the other had no past. Yet they still had this connection and a lot of things in common, but what they didn't have in common was gonna set them in war for the rest of their lives. If this movie just simplified itself and made it about Rey versus Kylo Ren, I think you could have something here. Would it change the minds of those who hated Last Jedi? No, but apparently neither did this. At least you could have an interesting story that dives into the psyche of the characters. But instead, we get side quests and treasure hunts and twists and surprises that aren't really big twists and surprises. But I'm not saying anything that new. You've heard what critics have to say, you've heard what Star Wars fans have to say, so why were there a lot of average movie fans that enjoyed it so much? The only thing I can guess is it gave what an occasional Star Wars fan is looking for. A lot of action, a lot of effects, a lot of callbacks, a lot of, oh, I remember that ship, oh, I remember that character, they're back, cool. semi-complicated ideas with not exactly a straightforward good versus evil story, but you can still gather the bad guys wear black, the good guys wear white, but one or two of them have bits of gray, so you can feel like this movie is deeper than it really is. And if that's what does it for you, awesome. I'm not so die-hard a Star Wars fan that if you like this film, I'm gonna say you're a betrayal to like the whole trilogy, franchise, whatever the hell it even is now. All I can say is, it was very underwhelming for me. Even the people I talk to who like this movie don't really love it. They're just kind of glad to see the Star Wars-y stuff they like to see on the big screen again. They didn't really get much of that in the prequels, and even to some extent in Last Jedi. Slow conversation, ship mutinies, and casinos aren't exactly the big reasons people got into this. Whatever your thoughts, I think most people can agree this new sequel trilogy was very uneven. Which is expected, I suppose, but it's a shame nobody had one grand vision or grand idea. And yeah, I know even Lucas changed a lot of stuff, and that's fine, things can be changed, but there was some goal in mind. There was a finish line, just people had different ways of getting there. I think they were hoping talented artists would come in and take it in all new directions, which would be great. People wouldn't know where it was going because they handed it to different people, kinda like what they did with the original. But for all the different directors they had, it was still one person's vision. And this felt like a company's vision. Which isn't always bad if you can hide it well, and I don't think this new trilogy did. Still, I'm glad I saw them. I'm glad I got these new characters that I thought were pretty cool. I'm glad I saw some good effects, some good performances, and yeah, some new ideas to a world I do enjoy. It didn't entirely work, and some parts drove me insane, but I was excited to see what they were going to do. I was excited to see these new characters. I was excited to see these old characters. I was even excited to see what they were going to keep and what they were going to change. Whether it works or not, I just find that stuff interesting. Is this the weakest of the new trilogy? In my opinion, yes. Is it a satisfying ending? I personally don't think so, but it is an ending. And Star Wars once again must find other creative galaxies to explore.